Hi, my name's Don, and I wanted to show you guys the flush mount vent hood that I built for my wife. Like half the country last year, we remodeled our kitchen. My wife really wanted a high-powered flush mount hood over the kitchen, over the stove, over the range, so when she's cooking, it would suck all the smoke out. We didn't have one forever, and this is what we needed to make the kitchen really what she wanted. She does a lot of cooking. So we looked online, didn't find a whole lot of options, and what we did find, they were all really expensive. There wasn't really a whole lot of stuff that was readily available in the US, so it'd have to be like shipped from Europe. And I just thought, you know what? I think I can do this. I think I can make something that's going to work for her. So I started planning. I made some drawings, just some measurements, and did a little bit of research online, but it's pretty much like any other kind of vent system like you'd put in a bathroom. And I just had to come up with a way to keep it low profile against the ceiling. Here I am kind of laying out my cut marks and my bend marks to make a pan for what's going to go into the ceiling. Notched out for the bends, and nothing fancy, just square cuts, no miters needed. So I bought some angle steel at the hardware, and I cut it to the longest length of the inside so that I could make the bends. And then I made the shorter bends first, and then I put that piece of metal on the inside, clamped it to my table, and made the other bends. I used a hammer to kind of tighten up those bends. I used a sheet metal folding tool that you can see here to make the shorter bends. Again, I used the hammer to kind of tighten things up. I'll put a list of all the tools that I used in the description. So after I had everything formed and shaped the way I wanted it, I went back, I popped some holes with an awl against a piece of wood, then I drilled those holes out to make room, make them big enough for the rivets, put a couple of rivets, or one rivet in each corner, and that helped it hold it secure. It didn't have to be super strong. I just needed to make sure it stayed in the right shape so that it fits into the ceiling and make sure that everything's kind of enclosed. That leaves a really sharp edge, so you do have to watch out. The gloves even weren't really enough. So here you can see a probe drill bit that I used to find the location where I'd be working in the attic. Sometimes these are called like an installer's bit. I don't know, it's like a 16th or 3/32 by 12 inches or something like that. This helps me to find where I'm working in the attic, so I throw on my PPE, and then I get into the attic, I find the probe, and I start clearing away the insulation. I was extremely lucky in this case that the places where I wanted to put my vents were right in between the joists. It was just chance, just luck that it worked out that way. So I figured out that everything that I had planned is going to work. So I mark out on my pan where the vent holes are going to go. They're almost centered. They're actually an inch off of center. That was so that I could be away from the joist and have a little bit more wiggle room. I use an old chisel, and I put a piece of scrap wood underneath, and I just hammer down through the sheet metal to make a whole bunch of little cuts and remove the circles to get those out of the way. I do think that if you didn't have an attic and you wanted to do something like this, it's still doable. You might have to replace a little bit more drywall when you're done or something like that. It might be a little bit more invasive. But the same concept works. You get a fan that can be mounted up and you install it like you would any other fan and just hide it like I did. That's really the main thing about this, was hiding it as much as possible from the kitchen. So I get my holes marked in the ceiling, and now I'm ready. I can use some, this is water-based duct sealant to connect these, I think they're called takeoffs, to the pan. Get everything sealed nice and tight, especially on the side where the vent's going to be. I want everything to be pretty sealed up tight because it's going to be creating a vacuum essentially, and I don't want to pull dust or extra stuff from the attic into the blower fan. So I cut my holes here in the ceiling with my oscillating saw. Great tool, highly recommend it. And then the pan, I couldn't put it in at an angle like I was before, so I had to make just a little bit of a trim, pull everything down, make a couple of adjustments with the oscillating saw. Real easy stuff. Get that up in place, and it holds pretty well. And then I put some screws up into the joists and then some other ones right up into the ceiling. And my ceiling is weird. It's got 2 layers of drywall, and then there's actually a layer of plywood above all of that, so securing stuff is no problem at all. On the inside, I prefabricated the T and the elbow together just to make it easier, because I didn't want to be in the attic any longer than I had to be. I put lots of sealing tape, of a foil tape in here. I want to make sure that everything is sealed really well. I did a lot of work in the attic prior to this on lighting and some other projects, and it's not my favorite place, I gotta say. All right, so here's the blower. This is a Panasonic 440 CFM blower. I put a link in the description. It's probably overkill. It's a pretty big fan, but we were comparing it to those big European units that some of those are like industrial, and my wife got it in her mind that we needed a big one, and that's totally fine. It's going to definitely do the job when she's cooking something like naan that smokes a lot, and it does work. We've tested it, and it clears out that smoke really well. So I'm using some supports that were already there from a whole house moisture removing fan that never really worked right. Those previous contractors had put in place. I'm using some of that same wiring, and I wired it down so that there's a switch under the counter next to the oven, just right in the corner by the drawers. So it's real easy. It's really quiet when it runs. So quiet, I'm sure it's just going to get turned on and left on because it is so quiet. There's also, you can just barely see it here, a backflow or backdraft preventer in just before that blower, just to keep cold air from feeding back through this system into the kitchen. Wanted to make sure that was not gonna, I didn't want to lose all my heat. So I vented the thing out through the attic door just temporarily so we can test it. And from here on, it was actually working, and we were able to test it and see how it worked. And you can kind of see the smoke getting sucked up into there. It's hard to show how this thing's actually working, but... And then, so here I'm placing some extra insulation over the bare metal, and now it's time to finish the connection. So this is a little bit later, coming back, taking out the old whole house fan system. There was lots of loose connections. The installation, whoever did that before, did a really poor job. And so now I'm running the 8-inch, so it's all 8-inch duct work here. So running the 8-inch duct system out through that hole. This is the old whole house system vent. Taking that off. I used about 25 feet of insulated duct, the flexible duct, and then I had another section of 25 feet. I didn't quite need all of that you'll see here in a minute. So I took the old vent cover off. I did some fussing around. The wood siding is underneath the plastic siding. There's wood. It's about 1 inch thick, and it took a bit of fiddling to get through that. But once I got that in place, I was able to go back up. I used some exterior sealant silicone stuff here to close it up tight, make sure no water's going to get in there. So somehow the camera's sideways. I don't know. Don't worry about that. I used a 3-foot piece of straight pipe and cut it and made crimped ends so that I can connect the different types of pipes together, kind of like a pipe nipple. I don't know. That's so I got that connected, and then I have this uninsulated section for the last bit of it through the unfinished garage area. I figured I could save a few bucks here and just use the uninsulated stuff for this last little section. And I still have a little bit left. Maybe it'll come in handy someday. Maybe it'll end up in the trash. I don't know. And got to remember to put the clamp in place. Figure out how long I need it. Cutting the stuff is interesting. You just remove the foil and then you have to cut the wire. Put some crimps on the fan and get it all in place. And tighten down that clamp. Not hard. And here you can see the fan running. You can see there's a little spring-loaded door on there, pushed up into place. So for the screen, to cover this all, I pretty much made a picture frame. I didn't film everything. There's 1,000 videos about making picture frames, but I was gonna miter it. I messed up my measurements somewhere. So here I'm just putting some wedges in and just clamping it right down to the table with some scrap wood. Wanted to make sure it was all nice and flat. Okay, so here's the screen itself. I hold it down with glue and staples. I wanted to get it as flat as possible, but also make sure it's secure, so I got a little bit of both. Get the glue and the staples in place. Then to make sure I don't want any of that glue stuck in the staple gun, so I get that cleaned out. Check to make sure the staples don't go through. And then to fill up the rabbets where the miters should have been, I mix up some wood filler and just slather that on there and let it dry. Okay, after it's all dry, I go through, make sure all my staples are down, make sure everything's not gonna make sure it's all gonna be really low profile. I don't want to have anything standing out or sticking out. Do some final sanding and on to paint. So I put a quick coat of primer on there. And then our ceiling color is a really light gray color. So I think it looks great. My wife picked it out. She did a great job, of course. Got it all painted up. Got the edges and the corners. I should have painted the screen separate, but whatever. So I got my son and his friend to help hold the screen in place. I used some finished nails to secure it after we got it squared and centered. On camera, you can really see through the screen, which is kind of strange, but in person, it's much harder to see through it. It looks really good in place, just needs a little bit of touch up where the nails are, but otherwise I think it looks great. It functions wonderfully. In the future, I'd love to upgrade it to some kind of a stainless steel panel like the fancy ones I showed at the beginning, but this definitely works for now. It's really low profile, my wife is happy, and that's what really counts. So I hope this was helpful. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, and give the video a like if it was helpful for you. Thanks for watching.